remeasurement when they left to see if they actually absorbed what we hoped they would absorb.
Right.
And Steve and I have been talking about, that same principle here at Microsoft in terms of our security training. To be frank, one of the challenges neither Steve nor I are academics. When I did this with the government, I sat down with the folks from Princeton, talked about how you actually measure this stuff.
The ETS guys.
Very hard,
Yeah.
complicated, and all that stuff. And we certainly have not applied that kind of rigor. Very conscious of that when we're talking about what things we can do that would make sense. The other thing is you have to overlay that backdrop over the commercial environment in which we live. We do ask employees to do mandatory things. The more mandatory things we ask them to do, the less time they're about it themselves. So we're also sensitive because we're going to live on a lot of different things, not just security, not just software development. Things about standards of business conduct, accountability, a lot of high-level corporate stuff. So we're talking about how we can measure this stuff meaningfully and also act beyond the stuff.
Right. Okay. Let me then talk a bit about topics that we might cover at the next meeting. And I should preface these remarks with, there continues to be subtext on the board that we don't have a lot of visibility into what's going on, either what's highly visible or what's buried in the company. And so there are some things we might have asked for if we knew about them, but we don't. And we, in a sense, depend on you guys to pull these things up. And I know it's a hard thing to do. So we're going to suggest some topics, and we're going to count on you to say, no, that's really not a good thing. But we also count on you to say, there's this other thing that's brewing, and you really ought to hear about it, because just because you didn't know about it isn't a, so treat this list that way. And of course, I presume we'll have a dialogue about it. Well, Longhorn is at the top of our list. It's been a while. It seems like it might actually get out the door, and so on. We heard Steve's talk on process, and we've also heard about this engineering excellence plan. There's a fellow named John Devan who gave a talk. There's whatever Amitabh is doing, and we don't really understand how that all plays together. So there is this bigger picture that we thought would be interesting to hear about, and how those things get reconciled. There seem to be some opportunities for conflict, if you will. Identity management, and there are two pieces to that picture. One is the successors to Passport. We understand there are various software initiatives to build things like that, and it might be worth looking at them. And second, there was this big discussion in connection with the privacy policy about what is an identity. It's clearly not just a UID or a GUID. It could be enough data to discriminate against who you are, and that we think that's an unresolved issue, and we all might profit from having a discussion about it. Usability testing seems to be important for security stuff, and the extent to which the company understands this and is making progress on adding usability as a piece of the security picture might be worth looking at. Or you might say you don't know anything about it, and then my asking the question is enough to get something spun up.
So are you looking for a usability lab type stuff there, or are you looking for very the usability folks in MSR, or a combination of both? Or?
I'll tell you the question, and you sort out the answer. It's pretty clear that, for example, this next generation security thing is going to depend on doing a good job of presenting to the user a window that looks different when you're talking to the green machine than when you're talking to the red machine, and an understanding of how you can do cut and paste. And since most people aren't even clever about logging in the right way or setting their file permissions because the interfaces, there may not be a prayer that all this wonderful functionality will be used well, unless some usability people are involved. And we'd like to understand the extent to which the Trustworthy initiative is involving them to head off this problem so that you don't discover it when you ship the product. Right. A lot of I didn't know that's what I was doing, and
This is UI.
yeah, right.
I was thinking, I just wanted to make sure.
So if I say UI, that'll do. Yep. The intersection of DRM and copyright. Right? We haven't heard anything about digital rights management, copyright. You got to have a story on it by now. There've got to be product developments and so on. So that seems like something we might want to look at. It involves security and privacy and mechanism and policy, absolutely, both law policy and technical policy. Then we have this time we created something called a watch list. These are things that seem like they're interesting. We don't think they're as high priority as the things we just told you about, but we don't know where they fit in the company. So for all we know, they're much higher priority. There's this whole issue of embedded computing. What are the privacy aspects of having a computer running my refrigerator? And what are the security aspects? RFID, you gave us a paper on RFID, but it's clearly going to get big, and where does the company fit in that? And CLR security, the managed runtime is important for the security. We haven't really heard a discussion of that. That's a technical topic, and we would like to understand how that works. So that's the list of topics, and you'll notice there are just a little bit more than one could fit in a two-day meeting, and but anything could be swapped out or swapped in if you can think of something with higher priority.
Would you like to hear a list of new projects and initiatives each time you come?
Well, one of the things we thought it was for this watch list, if we heard 15-minute briefs on them for an hour, and since 15 minutes is shorter than our 20-minute question cutoff, it meant we wouldn't ask any questions. It may not be a good use of our time to hear a long list. It may be a better use if you guys shared with Deidre and me a long list and we had a discussion and tried to sort out where things fit in.
We can send you a list before the meeting.
Well, before the phone conversation in which Dave and I sort out what the agenda is going to be. Sure. Depending on, sure. So then the last thing is where we're hoping to hear from you. One issue is we'd like to hear from you about what you thought of the various kinds of feedback you got today, because that's a good way for us to know if we're giving you useful feedback. And second, it's becoming clear that there are these topics that come up at a meeting. They're controversial or they're deep, and so in this slot we don't get a chance to cover them. The proponent, the speaker, would really like to hear more from us, and it's not going to be efficient for us to have full board meetings because the length of the board meeting is going to grow as a function of how many topics we've done. So we need some kind of mechanism for follow-on activity. And we saw opportunities for follow-on activity with regard to the details of the hypervisor, with regard to how the assurance effort ends up directing itself, and with regard to the privacy policy, including, for example, coming up with a specific example of the privacy policy, that is a privacy policy applied to a specific piece of software or something. And those are things where you would engage a subset of the board in some way. And so what we thought we would put the ball in your court about suggesting whether you think any of that or any other things needs follow-up, and suggesting a mechanism that isn't a full board meeting, because we just don't think that's going to be efficient. And right. And that's all. People are going to send you detailed comments. They'll send all of us will send all of us detailed comments. So you'll see all of them. Nothing came up in the closed session that wasn't already said. So there's nothing going to be surprising in those comments. And So it's now up to you to tell us what you thought and talk a little bit about following. Yeah.